She was declared a tragedy before sunrise. Not because she had died, no, but because everyone in that hospital room had already moved on as if she had. The machines hummed softly, steady and indifferent, like they had no idea a woman's entire life had just been paused mid-breath. Her name echoed faintly in the corridor once, then never again. To the nurses, she was a chart. To the doctors, a prognosis. To the man standing at the foot of the bed, her billionaire husband, she had already become an inconvenience. From the outside, their marriage had been flawless. The kind people pointed to at charity galas and whispered about with admiration. He arrived in tailored suits, she in quiet elegance. Cameras loved them. Investors trusted him. Neighbors envied her. If love could be measured by appearances alone, they had more than enough. But hospitals have a way of stripping lies bare. She had been rushed an hours earlier after collapsing in their penthouse bathroom. The marble floor was still cold against her cheek when the ambulance doors closed. Doctors spoke in clipped urgency. Blood pressure dropping, oxygen unstable, neurological response unclear. Someone asked how long she'd been unconscious. Someone else said it didn't matter now. By the time the doors to the ICU shut, the verdict was already forming. She's critical, a doctor said carefully. We're doing everything we can. Her husband nodded. Not the frantic nod of a man losing the love of his life. Not the shaking hands or broken voice people expect in moments like this. It was a business nod. The same one he used in boardrooms right before acquisitions. How long? He asked. The doctor hesitated. It's too early to say. I mean, he clarified, glancing at his watch. How long before we know if this is permanent? That question landed heavier than any machine alarm. A nurse shifted uncomfortably. Another looked down at the chart. The doctor cleared his throat. If there's no improvement within a certain window, we may have to discuss long-term options. Her husband exhaled slowly, like someone calculating interest on a loan. And decision-making authority? He asked. Power of attorney is already on file. That was the moment something inside her screamed. Her body didn't move. Her eyelids didn't flutter. Her lips didn't part. But somewhere deep inside the stillness, she was awake. Fully. Horrifyingly awake. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. But she could hear everything. Every word sliced through her like a blade sharpened by familiarity. She knew his voice better than her own heartbeat. Knew when it was warm. Knew when it was distant. This version, measured, detached, was the one he used only when something stood between him and what he wanted. The doctor explained carefully that she had entered a rare neurological state. Her brain activity suggested awareness, but her body showed no response. A locked-in coma, they called it. Hearing was possible. Recovery uncertain. 5%, the doctor said quietly. At best. Her husband absorbed that number instantly. Before we dive deeper into the story of fate, secrets, and unexpected betrayal, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and type "I'm with Mr. Evidence." And if this twist already has you hooked, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss how destiny unfolds. Mr. Evidence Stories is on a journey to 1K, and your support truly matters. The doctor continued, explaining stimulation protocols, observation periods, hope, thin, fragile hope, but her husband was already somewhere else. His phone buzzed once in his palm. He turned away slightly, shielding the screen like it held something private. Something alive. But what she didn't know was this. Someone else was already waiting to take her place. She may be able to hear, the doctor said again, slower this time, as if that detail mattered. Her husband finally looked up. His eyes flicked briefly to her face. Blank, pale, silent, then back to the doctor. If she can hear, he said evenly, should we limit conversations around her? The doctor nodded. That would be humane. There was a pause. A thin one. Sharp enough to cut hope clean in half. Then he said it. Then let's not drag this out. The words settled into the room like dust after an explosion. No anger. No grief. Just efficiency. Her heart rate spiked suddenly. alarms chirping in protest. A nurse rushed forward, adjusting settings, murmuring reassurances meant for a patient who couldn't respond. But she had responded. Inside, she was screaming. Destiny wasn't done with her yet. And this moment, this quiet sentence spoken without remorse, would change everything. The sentence he spoke did not echo in the room. It settled. It sank. And from that moment on, everything continued, as if she were already gone. Morning light crept through the ICU blinds, soft and ordinary, the kind of light that usually promises another chance. Nurses rotated shifts. Charts were updated. Machines beeped on schedule. Outside the hospital walls, traffic moved, coffee was poured, meetings were held. Life was still happening, just not for her. And then she heard a voice she didn't recognize at first. It was light, careful, almost rehearsed. Is she always like this? The woman asked quietly. Her husband answered without hesitation. This is her now. The woman stepped closer to the bed. Perfume followed her. Expensive, confident, unfamiliar. The nurse introduced her gently, uncertain. The husband didn't hesitate. This is family, he said. That was how the replacement began. She heard heels click against hospital tile more often after that. Heard soft laughter in the hallway, the kind that didn't belong in places where people were fighting to live. The woman, young, polished, glowing with certainty, sat in the chair beside the bed sometimes. She scrolled on her phone, took selfies angled carefully away from the machines. Once, she reached out and brushed imaginary lint from the blanket covering the body that was still alive beneath it. I never thought it would happen this fast, the woman murmured once. He chuckled softly. Neither did I. But life moves on. I heard everything. She heard the nurses whisper at the station when they thought no one was listening. That's not his wife, one said. Apparently it is now, another replied. By the end of the week, the conversations shifted. They were no longer about recovery or observation. They were about logistics. The divorce papers are being prepared, a junior doctor mentioned to a colleague near her door. He can do that while she's like this? With power of attorney? He can do almost anything. Someone else lowered their voice. I heard the estate is already being restructured. Another pause. Another whisper. They're saying she's not coming back. She felt each word like soil being shoveled over her chest. But what she didn't know was this. Her absence was being curated. The woman moved into the mansion before the second week ended. She knew because the hospital staff talked about everything. One nurse mentioned the moving trucks. Another talked about how quickly the closets had been cleared. Photos gone. Jewelry locked away. Her favorite armchair donated. Her clothes boxed up and labeled storage, like memories with expiration dates. They're redecorating the master bedroom, someone said casually while adjusting her for. White walls. Clean slate. I heard everything. The husband stopped coming every day. When he did, he stayed briefly, checked his watch, took calls by the window. Once she heard him say, no, she wouldn't have wanted it that way, and she almost laughed inside her silence. He hadn't asked what she wanted in a very long time. Phone calls became frequent, urgent, quiet. Yes, transfer that asset. No, list her as incapacitated. We'll release a statement soon. Someone else was listening. Always. The hospital released a carefully worded update to the press. The billionaire's wife remains unresponsive. Prognosis poor. Family asks for privacy. The word wife appeared only once. After that, it was patient. The woman, his woman, visited less, but her presence lingered everywhere. Nurses spoke about her rings. Her laughter at the hospital cafe. The way she already spoke like she belonged. I feel so bad, she once said, loud enough to be overheard. But he needs support too. Support. She wanted to scream. To reach out. To leave fingerprints on the glass of the life they were stealing. But all she could do was listen. I heard everything. Then the doctor explained the rules. There's a standard observation period, he said. 30 days. Her husband leaned back in his chair. And after that, if there's no improvement, the family can discuss withdrawing life support. 30 days. The number repeated itself in her mind like a countdown clock ticking inside her skull, each second louder than the last. That night, she heard him make a call from the hallway. "Yeah," he said softly, almost cheerfully. "Make it Friday. Somewhere quiet. I'll be free." A date. While she lay trapped inside her own body, buried alive by paperwork, whispers, and a woman already living her life, the clock had started. 30 days. And destiny quietly was watching. The day the truth surfaced, nothing in the room changed, but everything underneath it did. The machines still hummed. The blinds still filtered the same dull light. Her body remained perfectly still, eyes closed, breath measured by something artificial. But the air shifted when the husband's voice dropped lower than usual, when urgency replaced control. "Not here," he hissed. "Not in this hallway." She heard hurried footsteps, a door closing, then silence, thick, dangerous silence, followed by words that were never meant to reach her ears. But they did. "I told you to handle it," he snapped. "I did," the woman replied, her voice sharper now, stripped of softness. "I did exactly what you said." "That's not what this says." Paper rustled. A tablet tapped. The sound of numbers being scrolled through. Her heart stuttered. "Those accounts are still linked to her name," he said. "If she dies like this, there will be audits." "So fix it," the woman said. "Transfer them." "I can't. Not cleanly. There are signatures, hers." A pause. "You forged them," he said flatly. "I copied what you gave me." "But not all of them." His voice hardened. "She changed something. Before the collapse." That was when it clicked. Not fully. Not clearly. But enough. There was something she had done, quietly, instinctively, before the hospital. Something that hadn't mattered then. Something that mattered now. But what she didn't know was this. Her silence was no longer convenient. "There's another document," he continued. "A second will. It references offshore holdings. Insurance clauses. If she wakes up, or if anyone looks too closely." "She won't wake up," the woman said too quickly. He didn't respond. "I said she won't," she repeated. "We're already here. We just have to finish it." Finish it. Those words rang louder than any alarm. The conversation spiraled from there. Faster. Messier. No more pretending this was grief or mercy. This was damage control. "What about the insurance?" the woman asked. "Still valid. But only if it looks natural. And the hospital? I've paid enough people already. But there are limits." Limits. I heard everything. She heard the argument escalate. Voices overlapping, fear creeping into their carefully constructed confidence. "She can't die yet," he said suddenly. "What? If she dies now, it's suspicious. The timing. The accounts. The signatures. We need time." "How much time?" "Enough to clean this up." The woman laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You said 30 days. I know what I said." "Then what's changed?" He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower. "She's not just my wife anymore," he said. "She's a liability." Something inside her burned cold. That was the moment the story shifted. It was no longer about betrayal. It was about crime. About forged signatures tied to her name. About money moved without consent. About a will rewritten in secret and an insurance policy waiting like a prize at the end of a countdown. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was evidence. The woman paced. He stayed still. Two predators cornered by a body that wouldn't move but wouldn't disappear either. "So what do we do?" she asked finally. He exhaled. "We accelerate." "Pull the plug early?" "No," he said quickly. "Not yet. We alter the records first. Change the timeline. Make it look like decline. And if someone notices?" Then we pay them not to. There it was. Out loud. Clear. Someone else was listening. Her heart began to race. Not from fear, but from fury. The machines picked it up instantly. A sharp spike. A stutter. Then faster. A nurse passing the station frowned at the monitor. "That's odd," she murmured. Inside the room, the conversation continued. "Once it's done," the woman said, softer now, "we can finally stop pretending." "Just be careful," he warned. "If she wakes up." "She won't," the woman cut in. "She's already gone." No, she wasn't. Her pulse surged again, harder this time, as if her body was finally listening to what her mind had been screaming for days. This moment would change everything. The nurse stopped walking. She turned back toward the room, eyes narrowing at the screen. The numbers were climbing. Too fast. Too responsive. "That's not reflex," she whispered to herself. Inside, the woman laughed lightly. "After this, we'll have everything." The nurse reached for the door. Destiny wasn't done with her yet. And for the first time since the collapse, someone on the outside was starting to notice. The nurse didn't rush in at first. She paused at the doorway, head tilted, eyes locked on the monitor like it had just whispered a secret only she could hear. The numbers were climbing again. Not erratic. Intentional. Alive. "That's not possible," she murmured. Inside the bed, beneath layers of silence and stillness, something answered back. Her finger twitched. It was barely there, a flicker, a rebellion so small it could have been dismissed as a glitch. But it happened again. Slower this time. Deliberate. The nurse's breath caught in her throat. She stepped closer. "Can you hear me?" she asked softly, more to hope than expectation. The machines hummed on. Then her eyelids fluttered. Not open. Not yet. Just enough to send a shockwave through the room. This moment would change everything. The nurse slammed the call button and shouted into the hallway. "I need a doctor. Now." People ran. Shoes squeaked. Voices overlapped. Someone said her name like a prayer they didn't quite believe in anymore. Another nurse held her hand, squeezing gently, repeating reassurances meant to anchor someone drifting back from the edge. Her body fought its way back inch by inch, like it had been underwater for days and finally found the surface. Fingers curled. Lungs dragged in air that wasn't borrowed from a machine. Her chest rose on its own. And then her eyes opened. Wide. Aware. Furious. The doctor leaned into her field of vision, disbelief written all over his face. "She's conscious," he whispered. "She's actually conscious." Her lips trembled. Dry. Heavy. It took everything she had, every ounce of rage, every memory of whispers and plans and signatures, to push sound through her throat. She croaked. The room froze. Her eyes locked onto the doctor's, then shifted slightly, as if tracking ghosts only she could see. "I heard everything." Silence detonated. The doctor stiffened. The nurse's hand flew to her mouth. Someone swore under their breath. The words landed heavier than any diagnosis. He leaned closer, voice urgent but calm. "Can you understand me?" he asked. She nodded. Once. Slow. Clear. "How long?" he whispered. "All of it," she rasped. Every word. Alarms weren't screaming now, but somewhere far away, a different kind of alarm had gone off. But what she didn't know yet was this. The timing could not have been more perfect. Hours later, as dawn threatened the edges of the sky, polished shoes echoed down the ICU hallway. Confident. Unhurried. The sound of people who believed the ending had already been written. Her husband walked beside the woman, legal folder tucked under his arm. She wore white. Not morning white. Fresh, intentional white. The kind worn by people stepping into new lives. "Once this is done," she said quietly, "we can finally stop waiting." He nodded. "It'll be quick." They reached the door. A nurse stepped forward, blocking their path. "You can't go in right now." He frowned. "I have authorization." "I understand," she said, holding her ground. "But circumstances have changed." The door opened anyway. They stepped inside expecting stillness. They found her sitting upright, awake, watching them. The folder slipped from his fingers. Papers scattered across the floor like confessions finally exposed to air. The woman screamed a sharp animal sound, staggering back into the wall. "No," he whispered. "No, that's not possible." Her eyes never left his face. "Hello," she said hoarsely. "You're late." Someone else was listening now. "I told you," she continued, voice gaining strength with every word. "I heard everything." The woman bolted for the door. Security was already there. Hands grabbed arms. Voices shouted commands. A radio crackled. "We need officers in ICU now." Her husband stood frozen, face drained of color, staring at the woman he had buried alive with paperwork and patience. "You weren't supposed to wake up," he said faintly. She smiled. Not kindly. "You weren't supposed to forget I was still here." Footsteps thundered closer. Blue uniforms appeared in the doorway. One officer glanced at the scene, then at her, alive and breathing, eyes sharp as glass. "Sir," he said, turning to the husband, "we need you to step aside." The man finally understood. The countdown was over, and everything he had built on silence was about to collapse. The hospital room filled faster than fear ever could. Doctors stood aside as officers moved with calm precision. A social worker arrived clutching a folder thick enough to bend truth under its weight. A nurse, same one who had noticed the spike, spoke quietly into a recorder, hands steady now that the picture finally made sense. The husband tried to speak, but the words wouldn't organize themselves anymore. They scattered, just like the papers at his feet. She watched it all with a strange calm. "Start with the recordings," the social worker said. A tablet lit up. Voices poured into the room, his voice clear and unmistakable, discussing altered records. Her voice sharper than perfume, arguing timelines, a date scheduled while life support loomed. There were timestamps, call logs, transfers. A second will flagged by a junior analyst who couldn't ignore the mismatch. Witness statements from staff who had heard too much to forget. Someone else was listening. The officer nodded. "That's enough." Handcuffs clicked. The sound was small, but it carried. Cameras appeared where sympathy used to be. By noon, the hospital statement changed tone. By evening, the city did too. Outside, reporters gathered. Inside, truth finally had oxygen. The billionaire's name unraveled quickly. Boards convened emergency meetings. Partners issued carefully worded apologies. Accounts froze. Properties were under review. The word reputation vanished first, faster than money ever does. Then came assets, then freedom. He was escorted past the same nurses who had watched him ask the wrong questions. This time, he couldn't look anyone in the eye. The woman followed, face pale, confidence gone. When questioned, she tried tears, then denial, then distance. It didn't matter. The evidence didn't blink. She was exposed and just as quickly discarded. By the world she thought had welcomed her and by the man who had promised protection. But what she didn't expect, what none of them did, was how strong the quiet felt. She signed documents with her own hand. Reclaimed decisions with her own voice. Lawyers explained paths forward. Civil suits, restitution, safeguards. She nodded, choosing carefully, choosing herself. When a nurse asked how she was feeling, she smiled gently. "Like I'm finally awake," she said. Days passed. Strength returned in patient increments. Muscles remembered. Breath deepened. Her name appeared correctly on forms again, no longer followed by parentheses or prognosis. The staff learned to say it like it mattered. This moment would change everything. When she walked out of the hospital, the doors opened wide. Sunlight hit her face without permission, warm and honest. Her parents waited across the street, tears unapologetic, arms ready. She stepped into them and felt the world steady. Later, in a quiet room that smelled like coffee and normal life, she told her story once, clearly without theatrics. Not for vengeance. For record. For protection. For anyone who would come after and need proof that silence isn't absence. She returned to the city on her terms. Changed locks. Changed passwords. Changed the narrative. The mansion became an asset to be sold, not a memory to haunt her. Proceeds funded causes that protected patients who couldn't speak yet. Lawyers called it strategy. She called it justice. Time passed again, but differently now. On a cool morning months later, she stood before a mirror and said her name aloud. It sounded solid. She wore clothes she chose. She walked where she wanted. When strangers recognized her, they nodded with respect, not pity. She had become something else, untouchable not because nothing could hurt her, but because she had survived what was meant to erase her. And when the final verdicts landed, sentences read, fines levied, rights revoked, she felt no thrill. Just relief. Closure is quiet like that. She survived. She reclaimed her name. She walked out alive. He tried to erase me. But you don't erase women who survive. You create witnesses. If this story moved you, let it remind you that patience can be brave, that kindness can be strategic, and that your voice matters, even when it feels trapped. Life lessons don't always arrive gently. Sometimes they arrive disguised as tests you didn't ask for. But you've got this. It's okay to feel shaken and still step forward. Love and communication can be learned and practiced, and resilience grows with every honest choice. If this resonated, like the video, subscribe for more stories, share with someone who needs hope today, and comment the lesson you're taking with you.